There is a profound quiet when you look into your own eyes in the mirror after a silent cry. Your face holds the weather of a storm that has just passed. Your vision is blurred as if looking through rain. But what holds you is not the weariness on the surface. It is a stillness, an unnerving recognition. You are gazing at someone you have kept hidden. Not the woman you have built, polished, or offered for approval, but a soul that has shed an old skin, standing naked before a truth it can no longer deny. You cannot go back to who you were. An ancient wisdom teaches that the soul has a deep thirst, not for perfection, not for the praise of others, but for wholeness. Like a river longs for the ocean, it seeks the harmony between the self you show the world and the vast, deep being that flows within. But to begin this journey toward the ocean, there is a passage that cannot be avoided. The passage of breaking. It is the moment the shells fall away, the polite nods, the careful smiles, the times you whispered, "It's all right," while your spirit fractured. All of it becomes a weight too heavy to carry. You find you no longer have the energy for the performance. You no longer seek to make others comfortable at the cost of your own truth. You feel no need to be pleasant or appropriate or just so. And in that sacred exhaustion, a journey begins. Not a journey to become a woman who is desired, but to become the woman who has chosen herself. In my tradition, we call this the path of returning. It is when a person begins to turn away from the noise of the world to hear the sound of their own heart, to remember who they are, and to rebuild their inner home stone by stone, silently, without applause, but with a depth and resolve that is unshakable. 1. The way of the unseen river, beyond the masks and into the soil. Some women walk their entire lives asking to be loved, but never once live as the one who is doing the loving. They are held up for their service, their gentleness, their obedience. But in the deep chambers of their heart, there is a quiet ache no one can hear. A teacher of old once said the most fearsome act is to meet oneself completely. This is not a pleasant thought. It is a quiet bell, ringing through the many layers of identity women have worn for ages. The good daughter, smiling at the right time. The giving lover, who knows how to please. The perfect mother, whose needs are always last. These are not false things. But when lived without awareness, they become like shells, suffocating the seed of the soul. In our teachings, these patterns of energy are currents flowing in the great river of life. Currents like the mother, the maiden, the lover, the caregiver. They are ancient maps to help us find our way. But when a woman becomes lost in only one current, she loses the feeling of the whole river. A woman carried only by the current of the self, sacrificing mother, may forget she is also a lover, a creator, a wild spirit. A woman, living only as the good maiden, often cannot say no. She cannot voice the fire in her heart, and so her inner world grows quiet and cold. A clear sign of this inner drought is the constant tension between the face you wear and the voice you hear inside. Many women who are successful, admired, and loved find themselves aching in the quiet moments, not knowing why their life feels empty. Because they are living in the shell, not from the soul. The shell helps us move in the world. But if we mistake the shell for the self, we forget the being that lives within it. And one day, the soil beneath begins to stir. My tradition calls this soil the shadow, the rejected, the untamed, the parts of the soul we are taught to fear. It is the earth where our buried anger, our denied desires, our condemned power, and our silenced wildness are held. For women, this soil is rich with all that has been named too much, too sensitive, too strong, too independent, too feeling. To be accepted, many women learn to pave over this soil until its power builds and breaks through the surface in a life quake. It may appear as a sudden sorrow, a tension in a seemingly perfect home, or a feeling of breaking after a great success. As the masters say, until you make the unknown known, it will steer your ship and you will call it fate. When the inner soil goes untended, it grows what it will, and we are ruled by its wildness. The real journey begins when a woman no longer fears this ground, but kneels to touch it. This is when she allows herself to feel her fire without guilt, to honor her own wants without shame, to say no, to not want, to step away from the roles she once believed were her only path. A woman walking through this awakening will have days of confusion. She is no longer who she was, but not yet who she will be. This is the sacred space between. Her inner world is a construction site in seeming chaos, but it is also the first moment her new self begins to breathe. The truth is, this darkness is not the enemy, it is the fertile ground. An ancient saying reminds us, one does not become illuminated by imagining beings of light, but by making one's own darkness conscious. It is by walking into the very places we fear, where we feel not good enough, unlovable, too much, that we unlock our wholeness. And the miracle is this: when a woman dares to embrace her own rich soil, she also unleashes her true life force. She becomes deeper, more compassionate, more powerful. She carries a light that cannot be taught or faked. I remember a woman who shared her journey. She was the perfect wife, always kind, always correct, always placing others first. But after a sudden separation, she fell into a deep panic. In her inner work, she met a painful truth. She had never lived for herself. She began to write. She walked alone in the forest. She tried to paint. She learned to scream. She learned to cry. And finally, she said, "I do not know who this woman is, but she feels more alive than ever before." That was her true self, long buried in the untended soil, now being let into the sun, layer by layer. When a woman walks beyond her shells and embraces her own ground, she does not become a better version to please others. She does not become a copy of some ideal. She becomes herself, complicated, deep, sometimes unpredictable, but always real. And that truth, once lived, radiates an energy that others can feel. An unnamed presence, not because she is perfect, but because she is honest down to her bones. In a world where all is edited, where feelings are smoothed over, where women are told what they must be, this journey of facing the dark soil, of shedding the shells, of choosing oneself, is the most essential practice. A woman who dares to walk into her darkness, to reclaim her own light, is changing not just her own life, but the energy of the world. And perhaps that is the kind of woman all hearts are drawn to. Not because she tries to be loved, but because she has chosen to love the truth of who she is. 2. The sacred fire. From the ashes to rebirth. And when the shells have fallen, when the unseen river is no longer dammed but flowing, the woman crosses into a new land. Not a land of peace, but a land of ruins, where the old self is slowly turning to ash. This is the stage that the old teachings never soften, because the path of returning does not begin with comfort. It begins with a crisis. The real question is not if you will fall, but have you fallen? Fallen so deep that it forced you to meet yourself for the first time. For many women, rebirth begins with a quake in the soul that feels like utter destruction, an unexpected ending, a cold silence after years of care, a betrayal, or more quietly, a morning when she wakes and cannot find one reason to rise. What seemed like feelings now touch the root, where every role, every expectation, every habit suddenly feels hollow. In that moment of loss, when all outer supports fall away, the deepest self begins to speak. As one sage taught, the one who wishes to understand the great questions of life needs, first and foremost, to understand themselves. In darkness, in pain, in the heart of what feels wrong, lies the hidden doorway to the self. Maybe you have been in that quiet room where no one calls, where the silence stretches so long you begin to hear your own soul. You believe you are lonely, but in truth, you are in a sacred meeting with the one you have forgotten you. In the path of inner work, this is the start of what is called alchemy, not the flight from pain, but the transformation of pain into consciousness. Just as the old craft sought to turn lead into gold, this inner practice turns collapse into strength. It turns wounds into doorways for the soul. A woman once shared that she had lived a good life, husband, children, a steady path, a family proud of her. But one morning, after everyone had left for the day, she sat at the breakfast table and began to weep. Not for one reason. She just felt an emptiness so vast it made her tremble. Soon after, a great sadness descended upon her. But instead of only seeking to return to normal, she began to write. She wrote down her hidden feelings, her buried dreams, the times she said yes when her heart screamed no. And she found a line from an old master: "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." She cried again, because for the first time, her pain was allowed to be. If you are hearing this and your heart feels a pull, if you are moving through fire and asking, "Why me?" perhaps this is not your collapse. Perhaps this is your beginning. The soul does not stay asleep forever. At some point, it will rise and demand to be lived. And often, it chooses to awaken us through the touch of pain. What is essential is that the old masters never encouraged people to move on quickly or to just be positive. They knew true transformation happens when we stay with ourselves through the chaos, through the wreckage. For the most fearsome act is to meet oneself completely. To face yourself in the moment of your greatest vulnerability is not defeat. It is the doorway to true strength. An awakened woman is not one who is always strong. She is one who knows what it means to fall. She has curled into a ball with no one to call. She has asked for help and been met with silence. She has loved another so much she lost the way back to herself. But in those unseen nights, she is reborn from the ruins. Not with rage, but with a quiet vow: from this day on, I will not abandon myself again. Do you remember a time when you thought you had hit the very bottom, yet somehow you rose? That was not an accident. That was the sacred fire, the transformation that begins not with denial, but with the full acceptance of what is true. In the dark, in the aloneness, in the confusion, your soul is learning to say, "I am my own." It is a paradox that many believe an attractive woman is one who never breaks, never cries, never shows weakness. But those who have shattered, who have dared to sit with their own pain, they carry a healing stillness that cannot be faked. They do not speak with words, they speak with their presence. No need to persuade, no effort to impress, because their soul has been melted and reformed from within. And as an ancient teacher wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The greatest gift is not to be loved, it is to become yourself. If you are in that gray space where the old has fallen and the new is not yet formed, do not rush for an escape. Stay, feel, write, scream if you must. Like a master at the forge, you are in the great fire of your own making. And in that heat, a woman is being born, not from ideals, but from ashes. You are so close. You may not see it yet, but something within you is shifting. This is not the end. This is the beginning of the miracle. 3. The rise of the integrated woman, the river and its banks. After the storm, while the embers still glow in her heart, something new begins. This woman no longer looks for a rescuer. She no longer hopes someone will come and pull her from the depths. She no longer sends long messages to hold on to what has already broken. She begins to do something that once felt impossible. She stays with herself. It is not a loud choice. It is a quiet, deep shift, a movement from her center, as if the soul has stopped begging and started speaking in its own voice. Have you ever felt that? A morning where you no longer care what others think, and all you seek is to be true to your own heart. That is the moment a woman begins to rise from within whole. A version of herself that no longer lives to please, but to be true to her own nature. This is the journey from the shell to the center. When a woman sheds the outer layers and returns to her core, she is no longer a product of expectations. She is a sovereign being. She no longer needs to be loved to feel worthy. She becomes love through the way that she is. A woman like this does not need to force her strength. She proves nothing. She knows when to speak and when to be silent. She can be soft without being weak, firm without being hard. Because she has made peace with both her light and her darkness, she is no longer in pieces, no longer at war with herself. In the old wisdom traditions, this state is called psychic integration, a wholeness of the soul. This is what gives her a quiet gravity that no one can name, but everyone feels. To understand this transformation, we can think of the inner energies as the sun and the moon, or the river and its banks. The ancient teachers saw that within every soul lives an inner opposite. Within the feminine energy of flow, water, and connection lives a masculine energy of structure, clarity, and direction. And within the masculine lives the feminine. When a woman is not yet connected to her inner structure, her riverbanks, she often looks outside herself for direction, for solidity, for strength. She may find herself in relationships of imbalance, where another becomes her guide, her savior, or the one who tells her she has value. But when her own riverbanks are strong, she no longer needs a hero. She seeks an equal, someone to walk beside. A master once wrote that this inner structure provides the sacred container for the soul's expression. This means when a woman develops her own inner clarity, she connects not just to reason and boundaries, but also to the power to think for herself, to make her own choices, to chart her own course. She no longer needs someone to rescue her from the river of her feelings. She has learned to stand within them and to act not from pain, but from a place of deep knowing. I once met a woman who, after many years in a marriage where she had to make herself small to keep the peace, finally chose to leave, not because she hated her husband, but because she could no longer betray herself. When I asked what gave her this strength, she said simply, "I have been with myself long enough to no longer want to abandon myself." That is the sign of a mature soul, not loud, not aggressive, just a clarity so deep that nothing can shake it. If you are on this path, you may feel that everything around you is shifting. People who once felt close may now feel distant. Connections that once felt essential now feel thin. Do not panic. It does not mean you are wrong. It means your own song is changing. And when a woman begins to live in her truth, anything not rooted in that same truth naturally falls away. The most beautiful part is this: such a woman is captivating not for her appearance or her clever words. She moves people with her presence. In her gaze, her walk, her silence, she carries a grounded stillness that only one who has walked through her own depths can hold. And that cannot be faked. Truth does not need to shout. It radiates in the quiet, in the way you hold space for yourself, and from that place, hold space for others. A master reminds us, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a part of one's being, but by the integration of the opposites. A whole woman is not one who has removed her weaknesses, or who keeps only the pleasing parts. She is one who has learned to stand with both her tenderness and her fire, her longing and her peace. And because of this, she no longer lives to be chosen. She lives because she has chosen herself. Do you feel something changing within you? Perhaps it is not yet clear, but if there is a part of you that has stopped trying to please, that no longer asks for permission to be, know that the whole woman within you is rising. Not from perfection, but from a radical honesty. Not to be loved, but because she has chosen to love herself. And perhaps that is the kind of woman everyone longs to be near. Not because she needs them, but because she has become herself. And that is enough. 4. The mountain stillness, the power of refusal and true magnetism. Not all light is loud. Some women enter a room without grand costume, without a loud voice, without any effort to draw the eye, and yet the energy shifts. The space quiets. She does nothing, yet her presence changes the room. There is a silent power flowing from her, a gravity no one can explain. If you look closely, you will see it. It is the power of truth. She is not the most polished in the room, not the sweetest, nor the most agreeable. She does not try to be liked. She certainly does not seek approval. And that is exactly what makes her a force. The old wisdom does not say a woman should kill her instinct to be loved. It simply points out that when we place being liked above being real, we lose the path to our own heart. A whole woman does not need to be liked to feel her own worth. As a wise one once asked, "What story is your soul living?" She is no longer living according to another's story. She is living the one her soul came here to write. Have you ever met a woman who does not apologize for her own weather? She does not hide her tears, nor mask her joy, nor shrink from her sorrow. Her voice does not waver when it carries the weight of her feeling. Her gaze does not fall when it needs to be steady and cold. That is a sign of integration. She is not acting strong. She has been to the deep places and returned. She does not pretend to be fine. She has been broken. She has been reborn. And the lines on her soul are the very places where the light enters. An ancient healer said, "Only the wounded physician heals." The one who can truly hold space for another's pain is the one who has carried their own. A whole woman is the living embodiment of this. She does not use her strength to overpower, but her experience to create a space of safety. She does not need to be better than anyone. She does not need to win. She does not need to prove. She does not refuse to be assertive. She refuses because she knows the value of her own energy. She knows how to say no. She holds her boundaries. She does not trade her inner peace to avoid ruffling feathers. She does not silence her inner knowing just to keep things calm. And most importantly, she no longer apologizes for her depth. She no longer says, "I know I think too much," or "I'm sorry if my sensitivity makes you uncomfortable." Those were once the tickets for admission for being loved. But now she understands her depth is not a defect. It is her gift. True attraction does not come from fitting neatly into a box. It comes from inner wholeness. When a woman becomes the guardian of her own sacred ground, the world begins to rearrange itself around her. Those who drew energy from her find themselves gently shut out. Relationships held together only by her pleasing begin to dissolve. But in their place, she begins to draw to her those who have also walked their own path. Beings of depth, of honesty, who are willing to show up with their whole heart. If you are learning to say no, if your hands still tremble when you practice holding your ground, know that you are getting very close to yourself, and you are becoming dangerous in the most beautiful way. Dangerous to the systems that demanded you stay small. Dangerous to the kinds of love that require your silence. And above all, you are becoming magnetic in a way that cannot be manufactured. A wise teacher wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Clarity does not come from the approval of others. It comes from daring to look inward and not turn away. The woman who draws all eyes is not chasing anyone's gaze. She has chosen to face herself and to stay. And you, if you are on this path, know this: every time you say no when you mean no, every time you stop apologizing for your honest feelings, every time you hold yourself back from the habit of pleasing, you are becoming that woman. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will approve, but your energy will find the ones it is meant for. And once you are honest with yourself, the mountain stillness you radiate will need no words. 5. The clearing of the path. Restructuring your world. The quiet power of an honest woman lies not just in the stillness she carries, but in the silent shift that occurs in her world. Because when a woman dares to set her own boundaries, when she dares to refuse what is not true for her, what follows is not just respect from others. It is a complete reordering. Her relationships, her way of being, and most profoundly, the very beliefs she held as unshakable, all begin to transform. Have you ever felt this? Once you start to live from your truth, the entire world around you begins to change. At first, this change can be painful. It can feel like loss. People once close may begin to drift away. Relationships that felt like your entire world can suddenly seem hollow. Friends may not call as they once did. Family may say, "You've changed." And they are right, just not in the way they believe. The loss is real. The great teachers understood this. To rest in the comfort of the collective opinion is to avoid the soul's calling. When you begin your own path of becoming, you no longer fit perfectly in the collective you came from. Your soul is calling you to a new land, a place where honesty matters more than belonging. I remember a guest sharing that after leaving a long relationship, it felt like she had stepped into a silent desert. She had not only lost her partner, but she also drifted from mutual friends, from the family she had known, and from the rhythms that had defined her life. But in that desert, she began to hear things she had never heard before, the sound of her own voice, I'm no longer afraid of the silence, she said, because in it, for the first time, I heard me. And a strange thing happens. When you stop grasping for what no longer fits, you begin to attract what truly belongs. Not surface connections, not people you have to twist yourself for, but soul-aligned beings. Other travelers on the same path back to themselves. They do not compete. They do not try to fix. They do not rush to offer empty advice. They listen. They show up. They cry with you without shame. And they celebrate when you dare to speak your truth. The ancient sages called this phenomenon synchronicity, the mysterious way the universe rearranges itself to resonate with your inner song. As you change within, your old map of the world begins to dissolve. You stop believing that everything must be understood by the mind to be real. Your intuition sharpens. You begin to dream, and your dreams are no longer just noise. They become symbols, messages from the deep. A master once said that dreams are the hidden doorway into the most intimate sanctuary of the soul. A woman in awakening begins to see that wisdom is not knowing everything. It is learning to listen to what she does not yet understand. She listens to her dreams, to her body, to the strange feelings that rise when she enters a room or hears a piece of music. And from there, she begins to live by an inner compass, not an outer clock. As she goes deeper, she starts to recognize the energies moving within her. When she feels creative, alive, and connected to beauty, perhaps it is the energy of the lover. When she longs to nurture and create safety, the mother is speaking. When she is drawn to quiet, to knowing, to seeing the large patterns of life, it is the wise woman guiding her. These energies are no longer boxes to fit into. They are living languages that help her understand her own inner seasons. Do you feel that you no longer want to explain your changes? Do you feel yourself starting to trust a knowing you once dismissed? If so, you are very close to the heart of the great change. Do not be afraid if old connections fall away. Do not panic if you no longer feel at home where you once were. The restlessness you feel with the old is a sign that you are stepping into something more real. A great teacher said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. The great change does not come from forcing yourself to be someone else. It begins with the courage to accept that you have already changed. From there, everything begins to reorder. Not around others' wishes, but around the truth within you. A woman restructuring her life does not need a grand plan. She begins by saying yes to what feels true, by changing the arrangement of her room, by walking outside alone in the morning light, by writing down a dream, by accepting that she is no longer who she was, and letting go of the need for others to understand. This reordering is not an earthquake. It is a quiet series of small, steady, and irreversible shifts. And that is how she walks into her real life, no longer borrowing beliefs, no longer living another's dream. Every step, even if uncertain or alone, is a step into a world where she is fully herself and needs no one's permission to be. 6. The garden of many blooms, integrating the inner archetypes. And so, when a woman begins to walk to the rhythm of her own heart, no longer chasing the sound of another's applause, she enters a deeper land on her journey. It is no longer about escaping what was old. It is about weaving the many threads within her into a living, breathing whole. This is not the work of shedding roles, but the conscious art of living as a full symphony, where every instrument is honored, heard, and allowed to play its part in harmony. In my tradition, we see this as an essential part of becoming whole, the integration of the soul's many faces. One mistake many are taught is to believe there must be only one thing: the good mother, the passionate lover, the dutiful wife, the pure maiden. They choose one face, often the one most easily loved, most celebrated, and try to live only from there. But each face of the soul is not a stone mask. It is a current of living energy, meant to flow and dance with the others, to co-create the landscape of a whole being. Within every woman lives a garden of many blooms. She might be the lover, sensual, creative, drawn to beauty, unafraid of joy. The mother, nurturing, patient, creating safety, a ground for others to rest upon. the wise woman, deeply intuitive, at home in solitude, with a vision that sees beyond the immediate, and the maiden, free, curious, playful, full of wonder and new beginnings. These blooms do not contradict one another. They are all expressions of the same root system. I once spoke with a woman in her later years, a leader in her field. For decades, she lived as the wise woman and the mother, leading her team and caring for her family with clarity and strength. But after a health crisis, she said she felt barren inside. She began to take dance classes. She started drawing. She wrote love letters to her own hands. She laughed and said, "I realized there is still a young girl inside of me who wants to play. That part is not dead." And it was not. The lover and maiden energies were not there to replace who she had been. They were awakening to enrich her inner garden, helping her to live more fully, more truly. The ancient teachers knew that freedom of the soul does not come from cutting away the parts we dislike. It comes from allowing all parts of ourselves to be here, without shame, without war. True maturity is not choosing one side, it is holding the opposites. You can love a deep conversation and also crave a wild dance. You can be a fortress for your children and also need a space where no one needs you at all. You can laugh with abandon at a gathering and weep quietly to a song at midnight. And most importantly, you do not have to apologize for any of it. If you have ever felt pulled apart by the contradictions inside you, do not worry. It is a good sign. It means the different flowers in your garden are waking up, sometimes all at once. Do not rush to choose just one. Instead, begin to listen. One day you may feel a pull to create something just for its beauty. That is the lover speaking. On another, you may crave silence and ancient knowledge. That is the wise woman calling. Another day, you may just want to lie on the grass and watch the clouds. That is the maiden. And when another being is in need, the mother will rise without being asked. You are all of these things. You are allowed to be all of them. A woman who integrates these energies no longer asks, "Who must I be to be loved?" She asks, "Which part of my truth needs to be lived today?" That question not only frees her from the world's cages, it unlocks a profound creative force in her work, in her love, in how she speaks and walks and is. She no longer tries to be the ideal woman. She becomes a vibrant, uncontainable being, fluid, radiant, and free. A master I deeply admire wrote, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries." Wholeness does not come from trimming away what we do not like. It comes from weaving together everything that we are. And you, if you have journeyed this far, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is there a part of me I have left in the shadows for too long? Is there a flower in my garden that is knocking, asking to be seen again? If the answer is yes, open the door. The path to becoming a whole woman is not a straight line. It is a dance between all the faces of your soul, and you are the one who leads the dance. You do not need permission. You do not need to be perfect. You only need honesty and the courage to be all that you are without shame. That is true freedom. Perhaps the most difficult and most beautiful part of this path is not learning something new, but having the courage to unlearn everything that is not you. The layers of be nice, be agreeable, be lovable, be selfless. They once kept you safe, they helped you belong. But at some point, they became a cage, and the moment you say, enough, not with anger, but with quiet clarity, is the moment you begin to become the woman you came here to be, not the woman someone else needed. You do not need to be the woman everyone desires. The truth is, the women who are most deeply loved are often those who never tried to be. They simply lived so honestly that they could not be ignored. And then, the right things, the right people, the right love begin to flow to her. Not because she is performing, but because she has chosen herself. There is a strange stillness in the eyes of a woman who knows who she is as she stands before the mirror. Not to fix herself for another's gaze, but simply to look and to smile, because the woman in the reflection is one she once only dreamed of being. Not perfect, not untouched by sorrow, not always strong, but honest, whole, and no longer asking for permission to exist. A wise master once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You cannot step into the deepest truth of who you are by chasing a false light. You must walk through your own darkness. You must hold your own pain. You must touch the things you once buried. And it is from that rich, dark ground that you truly begin to shine, not with a borrowed light, but with a fire kindled from within." If you are somewhere on this path, if things feel messy, if you still feel lost or full of doubt, know that you are not alone. We are a generation of women awakening together, laying down old weights together, choosing ourselves not from fear, but from love. Every time you speak your truth, every time you hold a boundary, every time you cease to judge yourself, you send a quiet ripple into the great river of life, where thousands of other women are waiting for someone to show the way. When one woman heals, she does not heal only for herself. She heals for her mother, for her daughter, for all those who came before her without the words for their pain. She clears a path not only for herself, but for all who will come after. Every step you take towards yourself is a light on the path for another. So even if this road feels lonely, even if you think you are not strong enough, remember this: you are never walking alone. Behind you is a river of older women returning to themselves. Ahead of you is the whole woman you are becoming. And in this moment, all you must do is choose yourself and watch as the world begins to rearrange itself to reflect that choice. You were never meant to live a small life. You were never meant to ask for permission. You are here to live your truth, to live fully. Start now. Start with you.